Oh, hello. Welcome back to the Shine and Thrive Photography Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Monica. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, in a way. And I'll let you know why it's in a way. It's about workflow efficiency and how to make things automated in a CRM that I know a lot of photographers use, which is Dubsado. I use a different CRM. I don't use Dubsado, but Meg reached out to me and she just creates wonders for photographers that really want to have automated workflows if they are using Dubsado. And because I'm not an expert in creating those types of workflows and she is, I'm like, I had to have her on the podcast for those of you that could use her help or use her knowledge because I don't teach on that. And I want to make sure you guys have a nice broad spectrum of what you're able to learn on the podcast. So anything to help you have more time, right? More freedom to do what you want when you want. I'm totally up for it and so excited to talk about. And so that's why I say like kind of my favorite one of my favorite things to talk about because I love efficient workflows, but I personally find it so boring to like set them up on the back end and link everything. Like Meg goes into talking about like actions that cause triggers in order for something to be automated and sent out to your clients. It's like, I love that. I love like strategizing what to do and when, but I don't like doing the physical act of setting everything up. And that's what she does. And that is her zone of genius. And that brings her so much joy. And she loves nerding out on it. So I'm so excited for you to hear from her with her explaining everything so passionately. And yeah, she offers like help for photographers, like a full on done for you service to help get your Dubsado properly set up so you can hit the ground running, super organized and efficient. And then she also is launching full on guides and PDFs if you want another option, if you want to do it yourself, but you don't want to figure out from scratch how to do it. So she has got you covered. And so before I dive into the episode, I'm just going to introduce Meg to you. So Meg Cooper is a Dubsado workflow expert, aka workflow magician. I love that. That sounds so cool. Who has built dozens of customized 75 plus step automations for entrepreneurs to allow them to scale their business to the next level. She's freed up thousands of hours of their time while their Dubsado, I never know how to say the word, Dubsado Robo Assistant flawlessly handles their client experience in the background, including her own. She believes in automating your systems in ways that don't feel automated and loves nothing more than blowing her clients' minds with the things they didn't know was possible in Dubsado. Spoiler alert, this happens frequently. When she's not brainstorming the next branch of her business, you'll find her devouring business and personal growth books, taking approximately 1 million photos of her two feline daughters, or bumping down dirt roads in national forest wilderness with her husband. So, hope you enjoy this episode. Well, Meg, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you. And this is, as I mentioned to you in the email, like literally when you reached out to me and I like started just creeping your website and your Instagram, I was like, oh my God, I want to see more. I want to know more. It was just like led me down this rabbit hole. And I'm like, that's so rare that that happens. So man, you're just like your branding and who you are and everything is like so on point and it's so clear. And now that we're like even chatting for the first time, like we chatted a little bit before recording. Yeah, we mentioned to each other, it feels like we've like known each other. It's like, I was like, I knew it would get along, like from how you showed up online. I'm like, yeah, so I'm just so excited to connect with you. And on top of that, just the way that like, you present the information of like the services you offer for photographers and how you help them and the testimonials and all that was just like such high caliber, high quality. I could just tell, especially because I have this like eye, since I outsource so much in my business, I have this eye of like spotting like qualities in people that do lead to amazing results. And I can just tell like you're so detail oriented and like you really care. Just energetically, I could just care. I mean, I could just tell from all of that how much work and care you put into that and how you leave photographers so happy and giving them so much more freedom. So that was a big little spiel to welcome you, but that's just kind of what was on my heart. So yeah, welcome, Meg.
Thank you so much for those kind words. That's really nice of you to say. I'm so excited to be here and talk about all the Dubsado things. It really does mean a lot to me to hear all that feedback about my site because I did all of my own branding myself. I did my website design, I did my copy, and it feels so good to hear that it's like coming through on the other side and resonating
Mm.
with someone who just comes across it. So I appreciate your kind words. It means a lot.
Yeah, because sometimes like you're just so in it that we're just like we're dissecting everything we do, but we don't see it from like the outside perspective or like, oh, maybe this can still be updated or this. So it's like nice to get that feedback. So yeah, I totally feel you on that. And just could you let everybody know what kind of a photographer you are, what you love to photograph, and also maybe even how you got into helping photographers with their workflows in Dubsado?
Yeah, so I'm a elopement photographer based in Northern California. I've been transitioning slowly away from weddings over the last couple of years. When I started my business I was launching my business in end of 2018, officially booked clients early 2019. I knew the long game was that I wanted to photograph all day adventurous elopements. And at the time in 2018, like that was a very up and coming industry. It wasn't quite as popular as it is today, but back then I knew that was what the long game was. And I've been slowly working towards getting to there. So now I am excited to call myself an actual elopement photographer. I shoot all day elopements because I really believe in my heart of hearts that an elopement is another wedding day, and wedding days deserve to be documented in their entirety. So that's the kind of work I do. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I started thinking about offering my workflow building services to photographers. I am just a bit of a systems nerd in the first place. I love automating things, and I was geeking out about my own Dubsado account. And one day, this just like light bulb moment came in. I was like, "Oh my god, I could sell this to people."
Yeah.
And it just kind of snowballed from there. It took me a while to kind of get the ball rolling and get the perfectionism out of my head. And in
Mm.
order to start at all, I still struggle very much with perfectionism, but it's a work in progress for
Don't we
sure. But
all?
I know it feels a
Yeah.
bit like a chronic addiction in my head. But yeah, so do we do all to a degree. Um, so it took me a while to get things off the ground. And then in the end of 2021 into 2022, I started thinking about how to offer my workflow builds as a one-on-one service. Originally, it was
Mhm.
just going to be like a PDF guide that I would sell in a digital shop. And then I started thinking about offering a one-on-one service. And so February 2022, I finally like got everything honed. And that was when that's first quarter was when I launched my website. I got it all done. But yeah, it was just about being able to share my knowledge and about a platform that very few people feel like they are masters at because
Mm.
it's often very overwhelming to people. They don't know where to start. And I had this knowledge just because it's fun to me. It
Yeah.
brings me a lot of joy. And I
Yeah.
was like, this is a great niche to be in because I love
Mhm.
this. And so many people are struggling with it. So it's a really great hole to fill. And it's been so great working with the elopement photographers and else like other photographers, not necessarily only elopements, but I do work with a lot of elopement photographers. But working with the photographers of all kinds to up-level their workflows, get their systems automated in Dubsado, and allow them to step back into their lives so that they can be hands-off in their client experience and have dozens more hours of time back in their month to focus on being the CEO that they started their business to have.
Yeah, exactly. And how that's what's like I love so much about the power of getting support elsewhere outside of just yourself in business because you just said you're like I'm like a systems nerd, like I love that stuff, it's fun for me, but to someone else like for like me even it could be like when it comes to like automations, I like setting up efficient workflows in general, like client experience and like what makes sense as the next step, what would be the most efficient and brainstorming that, but then to actually connect the dots within the websites and the softwares and all of that. I'm like, ooh, that's not my cup of tea. And so if, you're someone listening that's like, that's not my idea of fun, but it's someone else's idea of fun, like for Meg, like you can save yourself so many hours, have that set up for you and hit the ground running with your business. And so that's so cool that you had that light bulb moment. I remember I love those light bulb moments because I don't know about you, but they like stick out so clearly in your head. Like, just like when I was like learning how to outsource my business, and I was like developing my workflows and for myself, just for me. And then I figured it out and I'm like, oh my God, everyone needs this. It's like, you probably had that. You're like, oh my God, I did it. I did it. I'm saving so much time. And now I need to share this with like as many photographers as I can. So I love that you had that realization. Um, and something else I love is how aligned, we were talking about this before, how aligned we are with like our mission to like help photographers. And because I on your website, these are some of my favorite words that I saw. Like you said, in small business, outsourcing should never be a dirty word. Yes, love that.
Absolutely.
There's also, I believe rest is just as important as hustle. Boundaries and naps are essential. Amazing. And you don't have to be a workaholic to be successful, like actually, like really. So I love all that. And I remember when I initially was using my CRM, and you do everything manually. It's like, I need to send out this questionnaire manually to this couple, and I had to remember to do it this time and this time. It was so overwhelming. And once you get to a certain point of bookings, like even like 10 a year, you're like, I have to remember to have like, let's say 6, 7 touch points with a couple at different points in the year and make sure that they're also filling everything out on time. It's like, it can get really nuts. And so that's why I can't wait to get into like this discussion of like the benefits of having these systems automated. Because I've definitely used those benefits for probably like 8, 9 years now. So yeah, if you are all like that are listening and you don't have your automated systems in place in your CRM, this is going to be a game changer episode for you. Like, keep listening. I'm so excited to dive in. But before we do, just a quick, how I do when I have guests, a quick little get to know you, Meg. So give us some like random facts about you as a person, just like personally. What are you into? What are your hobbies? What are your interests?
Quick fun facts. I love to kayak on the river in what we call our backyard. We live a quarter mile away from our region's river, and so my husband and I love to spend our summer days kayaking on the river.
Oh,
I know it's
that's
dreamy this summer.
amazing.
Weather is finally warming up here, so we're going to
Yeah.
be finding ourselves out there shortly. Second is that I'm a advanced beginner at Portuguese. I have been studying Portuguese for about 8 months now. I spent a month living in Lisbon last fall, and I discovered Duolingo in August of last year. I was like, oh my God, how did no one tell me about this sooner? And so that's my big fun fact is that I'm learning Portuguese and I study it every day. My dad is so impressed, or like
Wow.
continues to be so impressed. He's like, man, you're really like going for it. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, that's so
Uh,
fascinating. That is random because most people are like, well, I'm gonna go for maybe Spanish because it's like, more
Portuguese is
like,
very offbeat. Yeah.
yeah. Wow, that's impressive. So
Thank
next time
you.
you travel, are you gonna go back to Portugal, like for
Oh my God, I
sure? Or
would
good?
love to. This was my first time in Europe, and I
Mm.
absolutely fell in love with Lisbon. Highly recommend anyone in the area. Like, you need to put Portugal on your bucket list in the first place, but Lisbon especially, it was so magical. I fell in love with it. I would move there in a heartbeat. Maybe like
Wow.
3 heartbeats, but it was wonderful. I cannot wait to go back. I actually went there by myself. And so when I go back, I'm going to bring my husband along and show him all
Oh,
these cool spots that I found and all the windy, narrow cobblestone roads. But that's
that's
not what we're here to
awesome.
talk about. But I could talk about that for an
Yeah.
hour.
Let's really like dive into talking about um yeah, all the benefits of Dubsado and everything. So firstly, let's just start baseline because I know a lot of photographers that are listening to this podcast or even like just starting to think about having a photography business. So they don't even have like a CRM. A CRM is a customer
Client
relation,
relationship.
yes,
Mhm.
client relationship management software where you can like literally they can book your collections through their packages, you can invoice them, you can send contracts, you can send questionnaires, gather have their like all their central information like their phone number, email, um any notes throughout the process, you can have it there. And so some of you might not even have it and some of you already have it, but to those that don't even know what it is, that's what it is. And so now, Meg, I would love to hear from you, like So what does it mean to actually use Dubsado to its fullest potential?
This phrase gets thrown around a lot, especially in Facebook groups. And I see people comment this all the time. I don't know how to use it to its fullest potential. I know I could be using it better. I don't know how. People recognize the power that Dubsado has, but they know that they're not using it to its maximum capabilities. And so that phrase does get thrown around a lot. They think there's like some hidden meaning. It's like the meaning of life. It's like people think there's like a much more deep answer at play, but what it really means to use Dubsado to its fullest potential is when you're maximizing your workflows and you're automatically moving your projects and clients through your project statuses as your project pipeline. You're integrating all of your entire client experience through automated processes. That's what it means to use it to its fullest potential. You have all of your questionnaires linked up, you have your emails, you have all of your follow-ups, all the project statuses, all of your what I call mile markers in your client process. You're automatically funneling your clients and projects through that entire process automatically and offboarding them at the end and saying goodbye. That's what it means to use it to its fullest potential.
Could you give an example? So for example, let's instead of going like big example, like a wedding and elopement, because there's more touch points, could you give an example of like a family session, for example, if a photographer books a family session, what the different touch points are and what the system automates and funnels the client through?
Yeah, this is going to be different for every photographer. And I am not a family photographer, so I don't have that background of like what those mile markers it might be, but it might be like in your booking process, it could be like check availability for a consult call if you do those. Maybe it's you're waiting for a retainer payment, you're waiting for a contract signature. These are all individual mile markers that should be your project statuses that you're moving people through in the process. Then once they become a booked project, then you have maybe an onboarding phase. You have maybe a get to know you phase where you're sending out a questionnaire to get to know them, what they're looking for out of their session. Then you have maybe a month of, if you shoot maybe like 3 months away, you have like a status and a phase for them when they're in the next couple of weeks. Then you've got your editing phase, your culling phase, maybe sneak peeks that you do. Maybe you have a phase for waiting for feedback if you send a feedback and review questionnaire. And that could also be considered part of your onboarding. Maybe you have like a dedicated offboarding or a future follow-up, goodbye. So that would probably be like on a smaller scale. What
But
like a smaller session could be like.
could you give like more of like a literally like an example, even of just one phase, like a play by play? Because I think some photographers might not be able to like conceptualize, but what do you mean a robot does it? Like when does something get just sent off automatically? And how do I know that it's at the right time, that, like it doesn't screw up my client communication, or that they think a robot is communicating with them and not me, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so this all that comes down to what you're dictating in the workflow action. So it's not like Dubsado is an AI machine that's just going to just take over your account at one point and just send them randomly. These are all like when you're sending them not qualifications, but word just escaped me, but the thresholds that you set for when you want certain things in your workflow to happen, that's all dictated by you in your workflow. So it's not going to happen at super random times if you're setting it up correctly. But as far as like the robotic side of it, that's a lot of what people are afraid of. Also, they're afraid to sound like a robot, and they're afraid to come off as being like not very personalized, but that's where your copy and your messaging really come in. If you have really heartfelt emails, and this is also for your canned emails too, it's not to say that you need to be personalizing every single email to make it sound authentic and like you. In your canned emails, where you're not personalizing it to every single client, that's where you infuse your copy with your personality and your brand and just a little sprinkle of magic. And that's going to come through on the client side. Like, I can't tell you how I've been setting up these workflows for so many people, myself included. Like, I've had so many projects go through all of my own workflows. Most of my emails are automated. Like, I'm not customizing most of my emails, but because I've written them in a way ahead of time in addressing these certain phases that a client might be in, whether I'm sending like a form reminder if they haven't filled it out in a certain period of time, or I'm sending them like a check-in email about I don't know, their elopement tips or something, I've written them ahead of time in a way that makes it seem like I actually am writing that email to them at that
Yes.
moment in time.
Yeah,
So
because you're
it's less,
foreseeing exactly what they're thinking at that time, exactly the questions that would pop up. You're pre-answering maybe even some questions like it's like you're ahead of step ahead of them, and that creates an amazing client experience as well.
yes. The other
Yeah,
thing is that your clients don't realize that your system is automated and that
no,
any number of other clients are getting the same emails. I
yeah,
think that's where people get hung up too. They're afraid of sounding like a robot and having it all automated. They want to sound personal to their clients. And we feel that way because we are the ones clicking send on all of these emails over and over to our dozens of clients. And so it feels repetitive to us because we're
hmm,
constantly repeating the same client experience process, but our clients are only going through it usually once,
once, yeah,
especially in the wedding industry. They're usually only going through the entire process once. They're getting every email from you one time. They're
yeah,
not thinking about, oh, Meg must be sending this email to 10 other people. It's not even on their radar. So that's where people get hung up to. We see it over and over and over again. You have to remember that your clients are only seeing those touch points once and for the first time. So
yeah.
if you're writing your copy, creating your forms in an authentic and genuine way, putting your personality into it, I promise it will come through.
Yeah. And even I've done it, for example, because I've had, I photographed someone's wedding years ago, and then down the road, like I maybe photographed their family sessions, maybe once 1 year, and then 2 years later, they want it again. And so if I were then, because I remember clearly, like, oh, yeah, I photographed them before with a family session experience, they already went through this kind of email and the experience process. I just pretty much can go in right when they book that session with me. I can set up all the automations, but I can go in and customize, like at least on my end. I'm sure Dubsado offers that too. Um, you can just like customize, hey, just like last time, like here is a link to the slideshow. It's like I'm adding those little touch points that it's like I'm actually saying, customizing it to, hey, it is your second session with me a little bit later. So that's totally doable. And yeah, like Meg said, like you can, for example, for me, for my questionnaires, I have like one questionnaire that, like, when a wedding couple books me, for every single couple, 5 months before their wedding day, I send them a family and friends questionnaire. And as they're booking me, as I'm setting up the contract, the invoice, everything, I'm setting up all of this at one time. And it probably takes me 10 minutes total for everything: invoice, contract, setting up all these automated emails, 10 minutes. Um, then I just literally have it, okay, 5 months before their wedding date, that's the date. That's when that's sending out, done. And I don't have to like remember that. And that's like the biggest thing. And it's
Mhm.
sent in my personal writing, just like I would send an email to them anyway, and it saves so much time. So
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. So that's kind of like how that works, for those of you that have never even experienced automations like this in your business before. And so now, how about let's talk to maybe some of those that already maybe have Dubsado, and are looking to, like, okay, they have it, but they don't have their automation set up yet. Like, what are some small like tips or like ways of getting started that they can just set things up on an entry level instead of like really overwhelming themselves with a huge perfect workflow right from the start?
Absolutely. I love talking about these tips too, because yeah, so many people feel so overwhelmed, like we said before, and they just look at these workflows and they're like, oh my God, this is like a mountain I have to climb. And it just becomes something they put off. And so I absolutely recommend these like smaller, actionable ways to automate parts of your process without going full send on a workflow, that do actually save you a decent bit of time in the short term as you're kind of working your way up to get to full workflows. So we can dive into each of these specifically if you'd like, but the three that I recommend people start with setting up are payment plans, packages, and canned emails. These
Mm,
three areas in Dubsado specifically, I can't speak to any other CRM because I'm not an expert in those, but in
mhm.
Dubsado specifically, if once you have those pieces set up, that's what's going to not only set you up in the long term with getting your automations and your workflows set up correctly and efficiently, but also in the short term, you have your plug and play templates ready to go. So even if you are sending things manually and you're applying invoices manually, or you're sending emails manually, by having all those basics logged, if your canned emails, those packages, the payment plans, by having those set up ahead of time, it allows you to just like one click things when you're sending off an email, when you're sending off a form, when you're getting your invoices squared away. Saves you a little bit of time in the short term. And once you have those set up, like I said, it sets you up for success to go into building your full automations because you have those base foundation blocks set up ahead of time.
Yeah, that's great advice. And if you could give like maybe for each of them something to avoid when setting it, like a tip of like what not to do, one for each of them when
Oh
they can set it
man,
up.
what not to do. I have never been asked, never been asked that. I have to like think in reverse. There's lots of things to do.
Right.
What not to do.
Well, okay. No, that's okay. Because maybe I asked the wrong question. Maybe it's what to do. Give a tip of what to do. Because I think
Okay.
that
Yeah.
actually now
I
that
can
that
give
would
you some.
fit. That would fit. Because sometimes, if I think of like building, like there's a lot of times I right away in my head think the way I think is like, okay, when you hire a virtual assistant or an editor, like make sure you like don't do this, like because that will derail you. But I know how sometimes it's like it just depends on the moment, the situation, how the conversation's flowing. So yeah, give us a tip on one tip for each of them of what to make sure to do.
That's a little bit easier for my brain to handle.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
why it didn't like the negative,
No,
but
that's fine.
for payment plans, your invoice reminders needs to be that. So in Dubsado, you can set up automated invoice reminders. This is not done through your workflow. Many people think that invoice reminders
Mm,
show up in your workflow because payment plans do integrate with workflows, but they won't work correctly if you set them up through a workflow. So your invoice reminders need to be on the payment plan template themselves. This is a missed opportunity because people will manually follow up with people about their invoice payments and they'll forget about it. Having them set up ahead of time, like I said, this is part of the whole thing, but just having them set up ahead of time just saves you some time, but also helps establish those boundaries too. So you can set up reminders to say like a week ahead of time, hey, your payment's coming up in the
mhm.
future, like the day of, hey, your payment's due today. Here's what's going to happen if you don't pay it today. So I would say for payment plans,
Mhm.
mixing those two phrases together, for payment plans, make sure your invoice reminders are set up because that's what's going to serve you for sure.
Yeah, it's a great tip. Great, like easy tip in there. And how about for packages?
Okay, so here's the thing with packages. People like, again, it all comes down to customization. People are very attached to customizing, creating a bespoke experience. I totally understand that. I
Mhm.
created personal customized packages for a long time for my wedding couples. And many people don't realize that there is a middle ground in creating packages. Like people think it has to be either all custom or it's all pre-made, and that's what you're presenting to people on a silver platter. But there can be a middle ground, and this is where I
Yeah.
recommend people start. When you are thinking about your services, most likely there is going to be some elements of what you provide to every client that
Mhm.
stays the same no matter what. Like for
Yeah.
wedding couples, people like to build custom packages around like whether they have a second shooter, whether they have an engagement session, whether they have an album. The baseline is that you're showing up to their wedding day.
Yes. Yeah.
That's going to stay the same for
Yes.
every
Yeah.
single client. So
Yeah.
for packages, I recommend thinking about your common denominator for all of your
Mhm.
services. Make as many as you need. The great thing about Dubsado is that there's no limit. You can go crazy with like 50 if you wanted to. So I would think about the baseline of the services that you offer and build from there. So don't be scared of thinking that you have to have all of your packages pre-made and that's what you're only offering to people.
Mhm.
Start with a baseline. You can add new packages and duplicate as needed. With maybe you have, like in the example of weddings, maybe you have one package that's just the baseline coverage, maybe you duplicate that, and then the second option you have like a second shooter. So start with your baseline and go from there.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you can add like a la carte items. Like you can have
Yes.
packages set up in Dubsado and then at your a la carte items, and then you have your baseline, and then whatever people want to add on, you can just add that to the package. And that is what creates the custom like collection for them, right?
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
do that. Or what I was doing in my business before I switched to pre-made packages entirely is I would get on a call with a couple and talk to them about their needs. And then on my end, I would go back and
Mm,
add like specific items that they talked about wanting to their invoice myself. So yeah, you could,
hmm.
there's two different routes. You could have it in your
Yeah.
proposal and the client can select things. But it helps when you're building your invoice where in my situation, I would be on the invoice, adding the baseline package. And then based on our phone call, going in to edit that package and
Hmm.
adding any one-off things that they talked about wanting.
Right. And then updating the number
Yep.
manually. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. And then how about canned emails with canned emails?
There's so many ways I could talk about canned emails forever. The one thing I make sure to get with your emails set up is your email signature, first of all. So this lives in a separate place in Dubsado. It's not actually within your canned emails. There's a button at the top of your email template page that says canned or says email signature. So I would recommend setting that up. But besides that, the one thing I would recommend doing to save yourself a little bit of headache down the road and make everything look a little polished and streamlined is hyperlinking all of your links into nice, beautiful buttons. And you can do this ahead of time, even
Mm,
for custom links. I do this a lot with my like emails where I'm sending a gallery, where I'm delivering their sneak peeks. If I have like a PDF form that I'm sending to specific people, what I'll do in my canned emails is create the formatting so that the button is there, but put in like my display text, but put in like a fake placeholder URL so that the formatting is there in the canned email. And so then when I go to send the actual email and I pull in the real link, the formatting is already there. I don't have to
mhm,
spend like a couple clicks getting that all set up. I can just drop in the
mhm.
URL. So that's what I recommend is getting your buttons and all of your nice formatting squared away because that just makes it feel a little more polished rather than just having like a really long hyperlink in your email. Even hyperlinked text, I feel like could be zhuzhed up a little bit. That's what buttons
Oh
are to me.
man, you would die if you saw how when I send like the initial email for my couples to book their wedding, it's like I straight up just have I've always just done this and maybe now you just gave me the idea to like update that, but it's literally like you would be like, "Sarah, this is so ugly. What are you doing?" Like it's full on like the long link to like the questionnaire like for them to fill out. And it's not even, I haven't even like selected text and highlighted it to hyperlink it. And it's like, I've just done it that way for so long. It's not been an issue. And I'm like, well, maybe I can prettify it a little bit, but it's only the first email. Like everything else I send is like amazing. So I don't even know why I haven't updated that, but I'm like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But
Yeah,
things can be updated to be prettified. It's a really good idea,
totally.
actually.
Good. I'm glad that helps. Yeah, we're all
Yeah.
growing. There's no shade.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, awesome. And then what are some, okay, so I also know you would probably love to talk about your favorite like triggers or actions that like get you the most excited, right? To save photographers more time. So what are some that come up for you that photographers can add into a workflow to streamline their process?
Do you want to talk about actions or triggers first?
It's up to you.
Actually,
I don't even
I
know the
think I
fucking
answered my own
difference. So maybe
question
you
as
can
soon
tell
as,
us the difference
yes. Okay.
first.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
As soon as I asked that question, I was like, actually, I do know which one.
Okay.
So I would be happy to explain. So
Hmm.
in Dubsado's workflow builder, each workflow action is comprised of two pieces. It's an action and a trigger. So the action is what you are sending. The trigger is when you are sending it.
Got it.
So
Yeah.
we
Mhm.
can dive in. Yeah. So I don't need to get too specific before we dive in because then I'll just repeat myself. So we can dive into my favorite actions and then we'll come back to triggers. So my favorite actions, first of all, number one spot goes to send form. I could not live without send form in Dubsado. So
You're such a nerd right now. Look
I
at you.
am.
You're like, I can't. It's so
Oh, this is
exciting.
not even, just wait till we come to triggers. Like that's really where my joy comes out.
Oh, oh my gosh.
This is my type 5. Are you familiar with the Enneagram?
Yeah.
I'm a type 5. So this is my type 5-ness coming out where I just love to know all the things and be an expert in all like the granular pieces of
Yeah.
information. I love knowing all the things.
That's awesome.
So for sending a form in Dubsado is a proposal, it's a questionnaire, Yeah, usually it just comes, I always like trail off, but it really does usually come down to those two things when we're automating your entire client experience. So a form or a questionnaire, and or a proposal or a questionnaire, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
getting them all mixed up. Um, I love sending questionnaires in my client experience, as I'm sure pretty much all photographers listening do. And this just wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for this one single action. So with this one action, you can send all kinds of content to your couples. This also includes any PDFs that you're uploading to your Dubsado account. So you can send like your client experience guide or welcome guide or whatever you have, that counts as a form in Dubsado. So there's lots of content that you can be sending to your clients with just this one action. So that's send form. My second favorite action is start a workflow. This is the one thing actually, I shouldn't say one thing. It's one of many things that I love about Dubsado that I don't see. I don't know if I have seen it in another CRM, is starting a workflow. You can automatically dictate your workflow to start another workflow in the background. And so this for me comes out. I'll give you some examples. I have my entire booking experience, my booking process split up into different automations. So I have like my inquiry consult sequence, I have a contract sequence, I have a retainer sequence, then I have my official booked workflow. That would be a whole long conversation about why it's set up that way, but because they're all separate, I can use this action of start a workflow to run all of these consecutive workflow automations automatically. It could also be like if you have a wedding client and you have like a secondary sequence for like albums or an engagement session. There's any number of ways you could go with this, but anything that's not in your main current workflow, you can set it to start an additional workflow. And I absolutely love that. You can run, for those that don't know, in Dubsado, you can run as many workflows on a project as you like. And I love it. It's the best.
That's really awesome. That's really,
so
it's so funny because
I
like,
know.
I'm like, what's another word for awesome? I use awesome so much and I'm like
Stellar.
getting bored of hearing it myself say it. Like awesome.
Yeah,
That's
stellar was the first thing.
fantastic.
Fantastic. That's a great word.
Fantastic.
I know. I use awesome way too much too.
Okay, but now what about the T
There's one
word?
more action actually.
Triggers. Okay.
Before we come back to triggers, I have 3 for each.
Okay.
I wrote a couple blog posts about these and I was like, I had to narrow it down to 3. 3 is just a nice number.
Narrow it down. Damn.
I did. I was like picking favorite children. So my third action that I really love, these are all like tied for first place. I can't order them. So don't take these as like ordered. They're all my favorites. My third is change project status. And this is the one that gets me the most that other CRMs, namely Honeybook. I don't know if any other CRMs don't do this, but Honeybook I know recently does not offer this. Change project status is just such a game changer. So project status is, like I was kind of talking about before, these are your buckets, your mile markers, the phases that dictate your client experience. And in Dubsado, I'm actually Honeybook too, shows as kind of like a funnel at the top of your dashboard. And in the workflow, you can set your workflow to automatically transfer a project from one project status to the next and the next and the next, depending on, again, based on whatever trigger you set up. But that in and of itself, I love alone. I've worked with a couple recent workflow clients who migrated from Honeybook in the last like 6 months or so. And I found out from them that there's no automated way to change project status in Honeybook, and that they would have to actually go and click and keep up with their projects. When I tell you that my mind just
project status, can you expand on what you mean by project status? Like an example?
Yeah. So in my workflows, I have things like consult call booked. I have things like contract follow-up, retainer follow-up. In my booked sequences, I have things like upcoming 2023 elopements. I have get to know you questionnaire, waiting for get to know you questionnaire to be filled out, or like a follow-up. Could be statuses like editing, culling, sending gallery, things like that. Again, this is like thinking about phases of where your clients are. These are what dictate where they are in the process.
Right. So I'm still not, my non-technical brain is still not getting it. So like, are you saying that somehow it's automatically updated? Like if, because what if,
Yes.
for example, like my brain goes straight to, let's say, because I accept payment only through e-transfer. I just have always done that. Saves me credit card fees. People don't really have an issue with it. And so, for example, if the invoice reminder is automatically sent, but then they pay me via e-transfer, can that actually be automated somehow updated, or you're like, no, that's maybe an exception because usually it's like just credit card payments because that's more electronic and then that could be updated. Like that's
It
kind of where my
depends.
brain goes to.
Yeah, it depends for e-transfer specifically. It depends on whether or not your platform supports it. I recently worked with an elopement photographer who's based in Germany, and she has to take payments through a third-party company that is separate from Dubsado. So in that
Mm,
case, project statuses wouldn't work correctly because Dubsado can't watch for things that are not happening on the platform. But if you're
got it.
accepting e-transfers and like bank transfers through Dubsado specifically, yes, in that case, you could set up this project status to run automatically based on when someone submits the payment, as long as it's
Okay, if
coming through
it's
Dubsado.
integrated. Okay. And so for example, how about are you saying that let's say a couple fills out their questionnaire and they click submit. Are you saying that then it's kind of like the workflow is updated to that's done? Is that what you're saying the status update is?
It can be. So this comes down to the triggers based on
Okay.
when you want the project status to change over from
Right.
one to the next, but
So
it
can
could
you give an
be.
example of like one project status changing and the reason for it and why it's beneficial? Just one example.
Yeah. So a great one that pretty much everyone goes through is from
Mhm.
contract to retainer. We
Okay.
all like send off a contract first and then wait for the retainer payment to come back. So
Yes.
in Dubsado, once you send out a contract, you could set a project status to change from awaiting contract signature to awaiting retainer payment. And Dubsado
Ah,
will watch for a signature on the contract. And as soon as it's received, as soon as it says contract signed by client, it can change over the project status to awaiting retainer payment or whatever
amazing.
the
So it's
next
kind of
step
like
is.
right by the like project name. Maybe it's the like like Bronwyn and James's wedding. It shows like a status like this is where they're at in the workflow. Oh, that's really cool.
Yes.
Nice.
So
Okay.
in Dubsado, there's like one main pipeline across the top that has just individual numbers of how many projects are in each status, because your statuses are across the entire board. That's for
Yeah.
your entire client experience. So you'll see at a glance which and how, or not which, but how many projects you have in each status. And then if you click into those, what I call buckets, you can click into them and then it'll give you a drop down list of all the individual projects in that status. But yes,
Mhm.
on the individual like line item display at the end of that line item, you can see what the status is for that specific project.
That's really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember when I first got into photography like 12, 13 years ago, I would see like I would literally see a solution for that being like a printout like chart where it's like literally just a whole chart of like squares and at the top like just an area to write your clients' names and
Yep.
you would have to manually like write out your workflow and then manually like cross off this part is done. I sent them this email. I sent them the questionnaire. I got their contract. I edited their photos like manually and now it's all just like automated. It's incredible.
Dubsado actually has that. It's funny you describe that. Dubsado
Yeah,
has that exact view, but it's digital based on what you're dictating in your
perfect.
workflow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because it
that's
is a great view. It's just that it
mhm.
was, printed out. It wasn't very
Yeah, doing it
efficient.
by hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so let's dive into triggers.
Yeah.
So this might make a little bit more sense now that we're getting into like the triggers of when these actions are happening, rather than
Mhm.
just kind of like the broad view of what those actions are. So far and away, this is where I'm like going to nerd out a little bit. Far and away, my favorite Dubsado trigger is after form is not completed. That deserves a pause
Ooh.
for a mic drop.
I already get where you're
So
going with this.
I'm so excited. I hope you do.
Yeah.
So in many CRMs, like Dubsado included, I talked already about sending a form. So this could be like a
Mhm.
questionnaire or a proposal. It's really common for CRMs to have that functionality of sending these pieces of content. In Dubsado specifically, that I have yet to see from another CRM, you can use the trigger after form is not completed to send some kind of action. Again, think about these actions and triggers kind of happening together. So it's not one or the other. They're working together in tandem.
Mm-hmm.
So the trigger would be after form is not completed. You can dictate a workflow to watch for a specific form to not be completed and then take action if it's not completed in a certain period of time. And I'll give some examples. So let's say you send a proposal, like say you get an inquiry and someone's interested in hiring you and you want to send them a proposal with your package options. And you're like, here's the next steps to booking. All you have to do is click your package option on this form. It'll take you to your contract and invoice automatically, blah, blah, blah. And if you dictate in your workflow, let's say like a week goes by and you want to send a reminder to this client saying, hey, I noticed you haven't gotten your proposal submitted. What's going on? In your workflow, you can dictate it to say, after this proposal is not completed, 1 week after it's sent the first time, I want you to send it again. And here's the reminder email I want you to attach with it. So you can automate all of your reminders in Dubsado automatically. And it's absolutely the best thing ever. And there's also no limit to this too. Like you could set, if you wanted to set 5 reminders after like one every single day. No, I don't recommend doing that, but if you wanted to, you could. Maybe it's like a fast action thing that you want people to take advantage of. No, I don't know, but you can send as many of these as you want. There's no limit to how many after form is not completed actions that you could send. But yeah, it also comes into play with your own, like with your booked sequences too. I work with a lot of couples and also my own workflow clients who receive questionnaires throughout their planning process. And doesn't happen very often. Usually my clients and the people I work with, their clients are pretty good about getting stuff completed. Usually in my experience, you don't need more than 1 to 2 reminders. But, and even then, like they may not actually receive the reminders, but it's still really great to have these automated reminders queued up for them for these questionnaires in their prep as saying, hey, I noticed you haven't gotten your timeline questionnaire filled out. This is really important so we can get started on the next step in our process. And here's a link again to it, so you don't have to go dig through your email for it.
And that is amazing because it just, you guys, that long ass running to-do list that every business owner has,
follow
like that
up with so-and-so.
Exactly. That just crosses it off for you automatically. You don't even have to write it down on your list.
Exactly. That's why I love it so much.
Yeah.
All right. My next favorite trigger is after appointment is scheduled. This is something I actually didn't talk about before. I should have mentioned with small ways to get your Dubsado account set up in small entry level ways is using the appointment scheduler. I see so many people not utilizing that. They'll use something from Calendly or like just emailing back and forth. I'm like, just use the scheduler. There's one for you. There's no reason not to. It's amazing. So when you have a scheduler set up in your account, you can use this trigger of after appointment is scheduled to send whatever you want. So like, let's say you schedule consult calls in your process. You could send the appointment scheduler through the workflow. And then let's say like a day after the call ends, you want to send them like a questionnaire follow-up. You could say after a day after appointment is scheduled, I want to send this form to get more information so that we can prep leading up to this call, what have you. But yeah, after appointment is scheduled, there's so many different things. You can change the project status, moving from consult call or like a waiting consult call to consult call scheduled. Again, after that appointment is scheduled. There's any
can you somehow automate the Zoom link or something to be prepped and sent as well?
To a degree, yes. I actually use this. I don't do Zoom calls with my photo clients, but I do Zoom consults with my workflow clients. So that's what I have set up in my workflow Dubsado. I just use the same meeting room over and over, like my own personal meeting room. I hyperlink that URL into all of my emails. And so it just automatically sends.
Got it. That makes sense. Yeah.
And then the last trigger that I absolutely love is after invoice installment is paid. This usually comes into most handy when you are onboarding a project and a client, because like pretty much all of us, we require some kind of retainer or deposit in order to reserve them on our calendar. And that's when they move over into their official booked process. So with Dubsado, you can use after invoice installment paid to delineate where they go from being in the booked sequence to over now they're a booked client and we can officially onboard them. So you can teach the workflow to watch for this invoice installment to be paid. And as soon as it does, you can use that as a trigger to create any other kind of actions like we talked about before, starting a new workflow, changing the project status, sending a form, etc. So I hope
Amazing.
that gives some
Oh my
insight. They
gosh.
really
That's
are
so
in
much.
tandem with each other.
Yeah.
It's hard to kind of talk about, you can't actually talk about one without the other because they work in
Mhm.
tandem so well. But those are my favorites. Like I said, they're like children to me. And it was very hard for me to, very hard for me to choose those.
It's so funny. I'm like, damn those triggers for triggering those actions. I'm just like thinking of like people, humans getting triggered. It's just kind of
Mm,
like a little joke that maybe I just found funny in my
yeah.
head. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like so informative. And I know that those that are like, oh my gosh, like I needed a solution and this sounds amazing. It probably helped photographers like make a decision. Number one, that, okay, I think this is something that I do need in my business. Or if they already have Dubsado, it'll inspire them to really take action to, get things set up, whether it's them just getting started small and being like, okay, let me just start a little bit. Whether it's, hiring you and getting your help now or in the future. Like this was amazing. Thank you for sharing all of your nerdy, amazing knowledge.
Welcome to life in
Um,
my 5 brain.
your 5 brain. I'm a 3 wing 7.
Mm,
So
wing
one,
7. How
yeah,
does that work? I thought it
it's
was
like
like
I
only,
think I don't know. There's like, I'm not a full on nerd about that, but like my first result was 5. Wait, 5. Sorry. No, did I say 5? No, you fucked me up. You're a 5. I'm a 3. So my
yeah.
first result was 3. And then my second one was a very, very close 7. So it's like as if it was tied. Like that's how close they were. So that's what was confusing. So like the 3 is like super driven,
Yep.
like
High achiever.
achiever. Yeah. And
Mhm.
then 7 is like
Very
high
spontaneous and
energy
off the
and like
cuff. Yeah.
yeah, free spirit, all that. And that's literally like so me. So I'm like, oh, cool. I don't know. They're very close to each other, so I'll just say that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Traditionally, like technically, the Enneagram is supposed to be like your wing is supposed to be either the number that falls on either side of your main number. So for you, that would be either a 2 or a 1, traditionally speaking in the Enneagram.
Oh,
But it's not uncommon for people to get, I
interesting.
tested equally for like 3 different numbers, and I had
Oh,
to actually do like self-investigation to
yeah.
really see which one resonated with me. This is what I tell people like when they are getting started with the Enneagram in the first place. It's like whatever one you feel personally attacked by, that's the one that you are. If you were like, oh my God, this test is calling me out, this results, that's the
Yeah.
one you are. So I had to do
Wait,
that for
so did I
myself.
get that wrong? So like is a wing, it's like one of the numbers beside the number that you got?
That's technically what it is, but
Ah.
you can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I should read up on those too. But like, yeah, the 7 just, I don't know. But yeah, that's so
Yeah, if it
interesting.
resonates with you, live your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, live your life. Okay, amazing. And I think yeah, I know you have something really exciting coming up that, you've been working on, and that's your new product shop. So let us know all about it, all about what you have prepped to help photographers out.
Yes, I'm so excited. This is the actual manifestation of the first dream that I had 2 years ago. Like I said at the top, like before I started offering one-on-one services, my idea was to sell my knowledge of workflow steps and automations in PDF guides. That was the first
Mm.
idea I had. And that was 2 years ago. So it's really amazing to finally be bringing this to fruition. Depending on when this episode drops, I know it's going to be sometime in May, but I'm going to be launching my shop at the end of May. And this is going to be all kinds of different PDF templates and guides to help you automate your Dubsado workflow processes in small bite-sized chunks. So I have a couple different categories that I'm going to be working on. So I have my signature of like these workflow sequences with like step-by-step of the workflow automations written out, based on like I have an inquiry to consult workflow sequence. I have an engagement session sequence. So depending on what the topic is, it'll have corresponding like actions and emails to send. I'm also going to be including like a separate standalone guides of like swipe copy for each of these workflows so that you can buy them together and go hand in hand and have your kids' emails set up with all
Mm.
of the smart fields
Mhm.
populated into the email that for you can just literally swipe like with client first name. You can
Yeah.
just plug it into your Dubsado account and it'll be ready to go.
That's
So I'm really
amazing.
excited to finally be,
Yeah,
it's such a long work in progress, but
it
yeah, that's going to be coming
is.
up at the end of May.
That's amazing. That's such a good resource for photographers to have if they're kind of like, are you saying like if they don't want a done for you service, like this is the
Yep.
perfect fit for them? Yeah, exactly. That's
Yes, these are
amazing.
going to be much more entry level. I'm going to put them on sale through my first launch, but
Hmm.
it's going to be like $50 to $60 a PDF. So it's going to be much more entry level than my one-on-one service. And
Hmm.
it's going to be these like bite-sized places for you to get your account set up and working a little bit more efficiently so that you can, like we said at the top, just like these base building blocks for you to take step one and go from there. Hopefully it'll give you the listener empowerment
Yeah.
and confidence to keep on continuing in your account setup and
Yeah.
keep going from there.
And see, like I'm thinking right away, like I'm like, if you're a photographer that maybe you're like just starting out and you're just starting literally like, okay, I'm gonna start maybe booking, some sessions here and there. And like this could be a really good option for you. Um, but if you are already like so bogged down with so much shit to do in your business already, like I would highly suggest that you just buy your time back and like get Megan's support or Megan. I don't know why I said Megan because my sister-in-law's name is Megan. Get Meg's
My full name
support.
is Megan, but I go by Meg. So
Yeah, yeah. Get Meg's support and like, yeah, you're just gonna blink and it's gonna be done for you and you're not gonna feel stressed or overwhelmed. You're gonna be able to get everything else done that you need to get done. So I would strongly suggest that if you are already like overwhelmed and overworked, don't add that to your plate, right? Because it is going to shorten your time. Like the PDF guides and workflows are going to take away the guesswork. It's not like you have to figure it out from scratch. So it is going to save you time, but you still have to be the person to like sit down and do it. So
exactly. I've had
yeah.
people respond back to me once I sent these a couple through beta last summer, and I had people come back, like, even though it does take work on your end to set it up, like I'm not there setting it up for you. It does take work on your end to set it up, but the feedback I got last year when I sent them through beta was that people were just blown away. They're like, I feel like a master of Dubsado. Like
That's
this
amazing.
took me like an hour to set up and it's already getting me back so much time. So
That's amazing. Actually,
yeah, it
another
really does,
option.
like you said, work for both people who are just getting
Yeah.
started. And
I love that you have both options. No, keep going. I think we had a delay in
sorry, yeah, there was a little bit
yeah,
of a
yeah.
delay.
Yeah.
But it works for people just getting started, knowing they want to set themselves up for success going forward, and also for the people who are struggling right now, trying to get back a little bit more of their time as they're coming into busy season for sure. Totally.
And also you have another worksheet available, right? Can you
I
tell us more about that one?
Yeah, I would love to. So for anyone who's listening who might be like, this all sounds great. I would love to automate my workflow. I would love to get all this time back, but I have no idea where to start. I have no idea where to even map out my workflow. Like I can't automate it without really knowing what all my steps are. Then this worksheet is for you. This is a Google worksheet I actually designed for myself to map out my own workflow. And being me, I have to make it really pretty. And it's like design has to come before functionality almost. But this was something I designed for myself to really help outline where my entire client experience process was and breaking it all up. So it's tried and true by yours truly. But this will help you kind of lay out if you're just managing your client experience process by post-its or by memory or just kind of a little bit of all of the above. If you're just kind of straggling along and you're really wanting to just kind of streamline and organize it, this is a great starting place to just lay it out all on one page. I have it broken up into a couple different sections. So you have like your inquiry process, your booking process, your booked process with questions throughout the way. So you can kind of determine where a client and a project falls in each of those phases. I have a to-do list built into the sheet to help you stay on track with anything that like emails or forms that you need to make to build out all of your steps. But it's really in depth, if I do say so myself. Like I have all these I could talk about
I
it.
was
That's
very
again.
impressed. It's so pretty and nicely designed and like color coded. Well done.
Again, I had to make it pretty because yeah, I made it for myself first. It was like, I want something nice to look at as I figure this out. So
Yeah.
But yeah, I would highly recommend, if anyone's interested, it's free to download and to use and mark up in any way that you want. So if you're struggling to figure out mapping out your workflow in the first place before you even start automating it, this is the Google sheet for you.
Yeah, and you can grab it at Dubsado workflowswithmeg.com/worksheet. And it's going to be linked in the show notes as well.
Amazing.
And lastly, where can everybody connect with you and reach out to you and all of that?
The first place I'd send people is my website, is what you just said, dubsadoworkflowswithmeg.com. I'm not active on social media, and I have not been in 2 years. I don't plan on going back anytime soon. It's been amazing off of my little quiet corner of the world. I do have an Instagram account for my workflows. You can find me at Meg Cooper Workflows. I do have an account set up there. There's some content there to interact with, but it's really just a little mini website on Instagram to direct you over to my main website. That's where I love to hang out. And if you have any questions, you can find all my contact information is there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Meg. And yeah, I'm sure that people will be reaching out, and I really wish you all the best, all the success with your shop. Cause all the effort that you put in, and also hearing how people felt they were already like a Dubsado expert by just applying your PDFs and your guides. That's incredible. And yeah, I just sending you all the good vibes for the launch of your shop. That's amazing.
I appreciate it, Sarah. It's been so great to have sharing this time with you. I almost said have you on, have me on. My dyslexia in my brain. Thank you so much for your kind words. It's meant so much to me. And this was so much fun to talk about all the things in Dubsado.
Yeah, you're literally glowing. Yay! Thank you so much for hanging out with me and tuning into this episode. If you got value out of it, please feel free to message me on Instagram at Sarah Monica Photo. That's Sarah no H, Monica with a K photo, to let me know. I get so freaking energized hearing from others that what I've said has had a positive impact on their lives. Also, make sure to hit subscribe to the Shine and Thrive podcast to never miss an episode. I'm so grateful for you, and I'm sending you all the productive vibes your way so you have the best week ever.